Have you ever tried to figure out your style roots just by looking at a single piece? Maybe you thought that leopard print equals fire, but then you read that it could also be moon. And then someone says it could also be earth and even sun. It's so confusing, right? And this is where I see so many people make the same mistake. They think that a specific item just equals one style root, when in reality, this is not how it works. And so in today's video, I'm going to show you the real way to read your clothes, so you can stop second guessing your style roots and actually understand what your style preferences say about your personal style. And I promise it's going to make sense by the end of the video. So grab your favorite drink and let's dive right into it. So this entire video is based on Ellie Jean's style root system. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and check out this video right here first and then come back here. But for most of you, I know that you're familiar with the system. So the idea for this video popped after reading one of Ellie Jean's articles on Substack, but I wanted to actually use visual examples from Pinterest and also my own life to show you exactly how you can figure out your style roots. So let's start with one of the basics, and that is that some items very obviously belong to one specific style root. And so they're very easy to identify if you're naturally drawn to them. So for example, the classic black pantsuit wide leg trouser, well, this one belongs to mountain. If we look at the coat in the middle, this one is sequin, is crazy, so unexpected. This is obviously going to be sun. And then finally we have this flowy maxi dress in earthy shades. This is going to be earth. And this is very, very simple. But then we get to some of those elements. For example, leopard print. Is this fire or is this moon? Well, in Ellie Jean's book, it's literally listed in both categories. What about sparkles and glitter? Is this fire because it's more sensual, or is it sun because it is fun and unexpected? What about t-shirts? Why are they listed in both mushroom and stone? And what about sneakers? Why do you find them in stone, but also in mushroom and also sometimes in sun? This is where the big mistake happens. I feel like people look at a specific item and they see sneakers and they say, well, I must have the stone style root. But that is not actually how it works, because style roots are not just about what you choose, but also why you choose it and how you choose it. So for example, something that a lot of people associate with mountain is a blazer. And yeah, if you wear it with tailored pants, maybe with some heels, with a structured bag, that blazer can add that formality, boldness, professionalism that is associated with the mountain style route. But what about if you just want to be comfortable and dynamic and ready to move? Well, if you choose an oversized blazer and more sporty, easygoing clothes like this lady here, that blazer is not actually going to read mountain at all, because it doesn't add a sense of formality. It is not there because it's professional, but actually it's because it allows for comfortable movement while still being covered. So it's more of a practical piece rather than something that adds professionalism. And so all of that to say is that elements need to be read in context of what else you actually wear with this piece, and also why and how you're choosing to style it. And so these are the two questions that I always ask my clients when they tell me that they like a specific piece. I ask them, why are you actually drawn to this piece? What does it add to an outfit? Why do you actually like it? What about it do you like? And then I ask them, okay, in what shape or form do you like this? Because, for example, if you just say, I like a sweatshirt, it's actually really important whether you like a classic, simple, more fitted sweatshirt, whether you want something that is very oversized and maybe has the university print, or maybe you like a really fun, flamboyant, embellished sweatshirt, in which case you just like it because it's unusual and fun and unexpected, right? And so it's really important to understand why you like it and how you like it. And so the easiest way I found to figure out your style roots is to ask yourself, when you're drawn to a certain piece, what do I want to achieve by adding this into my outfit? Do I want to feel more casual, more flowy and relaxed? Do you want to feel more structured and bold, or more timeless and classic? Do I want to feel more delicate? Do I want to feel more glamorous and sensual? Do I want to feel more edgy or fun or anything else? All of that is going to help you to figure out exactly what need this item is fulfilling. And so if you've watched my previous video about style roots, you will have seen the style needs concept. And this is why I think this is even more powerful than looking at specific style roots. Because if you understand why you're actually drawn to this piece, what gap or function does it serve in your outfit, then you can actually understand what your style needs are and how to fulfill them. And so I know that this is probably a little bit abstract, so let's look into some specific examples and I'll show you real outfits of how a certain item, a certain type of thing actually can fit into a variety of style routes based on the why and how. So for example, let's look into animal print. And animal print is typically associated with fire, but also moon. And so in here, I decided to take leopard print because it's a very common print that a lot of us actually have or use or like. And so let me show you that it can actually be 6 different style routes depending on why and how you pick it. So let's start with moon. And animal prints have this inherent sense of danger, right? Because animals, especially those wilder animals like snakes and leopards, they're dangerous. And so if you're someone that likes the moon style route, maybe you want to be a little bit more separate from your environment, you want to be a little bit darker or edgier or tougher. So the animal print actually fulfills that function. And so you would pick that in maybe a coat or a dress or a boot, like something that gives that unexpected but like daring, strong way. This is how the animal print is going to show up. Now let's actually compare that with fire. And I on purpose picked slightly similar pieces so you can just see how the logic here is different. Now someone that has the fire style route will be drawn to leopard print because it is inherently a bit more sensual, right? And a little bit glamorous, especially if you wear it like in a long fur or in a bodysuit or something a little bit more form-fitting. And so the motivation is actually very different. One is to be more dangerous and kind of daring, and one is to be more glamorous and sensual, right? And that's why the same piece can actually belong in 2 different people's wardrobes because they would wear it in a different way. Something that I also realized is that as someone that has quite a strong sun style route, I also like animal print, but not for the reasons that fire or moon have. And I like leopard print because it is fun, it's interesting, it's a little bit loud. And so if you have the sun style route, you'll probably pair that with brighter colors or in maybe an unexpected shade. So maybe it is a snake print, but it's red, right? And that is straight away going to add this unexpectedness and fun. But there's also 3 other style routes that can operate with animal print and specifically leopard print. So for example, if you have mushroom, you might be surprised that you're actually drawn to animal print. And it doesn't mean that you have fire or moon, because leopard print specifically is considered a neutral for a lot of people. And so if you pick it in a classic cut, so for example, like in a jacket, in a blazer, pair of trousers, and they're quite simple in their shape. And especially if you look into maybe slightly lower contrast leopard print, so it's not this like very, very bold, big one, maybe smaller, maybe slightly lighter browns, all of that can actually act as a neutral with your other basics. You might also be drawn to leopard print if you have the earth style route. And that is because you associate that with nature, right? It's quite a natural print. And so if you have earth, you'll probably pick that as a fur or as a flowy dress or in a more relaxed bag. So you'd pick something that is more relaxed in its nature and just let the leopard print do the talking, but it's more about that connection with nature. And last but not least, because leopard print is actually quite bold, if you pick maybe a more oversized or longer, stronger piece, you might actually have the mountain style route. And so for example, you would wear that in a bold way, let's say with an all black outfit, right? And that animal print, that leopard print is going to add that sense of boldness and strength. And so very different logic compared to mushroom, who would pick it as a neutral, or earth because it's connected to nature. And so leopard print and animal print in general, I think is one of those very versatile things. And I hope it shows you that depending on why you choose it and in what shape or form you actually use that animal print, it's going to give you completely different style routes. Let's now look into something that I know is also confusing sometimes for people, and that is t-shirts. T-shirts are typically associated with stone and mushroom. So in a mushroom form, they're the most simple, classic, timeless crew neck t-shirt. This is your typical basic t-shirt. And someone with a mushroom root would wear that in a more classic or sort of neat outfit. However, if you have the stone style route, you would like t-shirts because they're casual, and they give you that sporty, dynamic feeling. They're not restrictive like maybe a shirt is. And so you would pick maybe a graphic t-shirt, a crop t-shirt, or an oversized t-shirt, just something that allows for that ease of movement. You might be surprised that sometimes people that have the mountain style route are also drawn to t-shirts. And that is because a t-shirt in itself is a very classic and quite clean item. And so if they can find one of those more menswear inspired, structured, thicker cotton t-shirts in darker shades especially, you might have the mountain style route and be drawn to that element. And it doesn't mean you have stone. It just means that this is the most mountain kind of t-shirt. And obviously there might be variations. For example, for me, this one is actually quite a fitted t-shirt. So this would lean into mushroom if it was purely white. But the reason why I like this t-shirt is because it has this graphic print. It says Manchester Library and it looks like a book stamp. And I like it because it's fun and unexpected, right? And so this t-shirt to me, even though in construction is maybe more mushroom, I actually think that this to me fulfills the role of a sun element because it is unexpected and interesting and fun. And so this is why it's so important to look into why you're choosing something and what sort of role it fulfills, how it works with the rest of your items. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe so I can continue to make more content like this for you. Now let's go back into the video. Next, let's talk about blazers, and we've already started to look into that, but blazers are typically associated with mountain, and someone that has this root very strong is going to look at blazers as a way to add power, to add structure, and to add a bit of boldness to their outfit. And so they would pick maybe those slightly more masculine shapes, more straight cut, maybe slightly thicker, more structured fabrics. However, if you're someone that maybe has mushroom, you might be surprised that you're also drawn to blazers because they don't fit with your motivation. But actually, the blazer that a mushroom person would choose is a little bit more clean, maybe slightly softer. It's more easy to wear. And so they would choose maybe the more single-breasted rather than the double-breasted, more military-inspired one. They'll choose something that's a little bit softer, maybe slightly dropped shoulders, that almost looks like a cardigan. It's more comfortable. And so this is more of a mushroom blazer. Now, if you're someone that has a stone style root, you might love blazers because they're a bit boyish, right? They're not feminine and they're easy to just throw on and go. You put it on and it's big, it's oversized, it's comfortable. And so you just throw it on and go. And that is the motivation and the execution of a stone style root. And finally, if you're someone that has the moon style root, you might be drawn to blazers because they add a sense of androgyny. Again, they're not feminine, and you might pick things like dark black shades, edgy blazers, studs, anything that adds this unexpectedness and structure, but not because you want to be bold or because you want to be boyish, but just because you want to add that darkness, toughness to your outfits. And the counterpart to blazers are cardigans, which are typically associated, I would say, with mushroom and flower. But actually they can look quite different depending again on why and how you choose them. So the mushroom person will be very drawn to simple cardigans because they're easy and they fulfill this role between a very sporty jacket, maybe like a denim jacket or a bomber, which is very, very casual and sporty, and a blazer, which may feel more formal. So cardigans are this sort of in-between formal and informal layering piece or top. But if you have mushroom, you'll probably pick neutral cardigans that have quite simple designs. It doesn't mean that they're always fitted or anything like that. They might still be quite loose fitting like in the pictures, but they're quite simple in their design, and that is why you like them. Versus if you have flower, you might be drawn to cardigans because they're cute. They give you a sense of sweetness, innocence, girlishness. And you would pick designs that maybe have little embroidery, little cutouts and lace details, maybe crop styles, more vintage inspired ones like the second one in here. So all of that is going to be the execution. And again, it's not as clean or simple as the mushroom one. Now, if you have stone style root, you might be surprised to see cardigans in here. But actually, if you look at the motivation for why a stone person would choose a cardigan, it's actually cozy, it's comfortable, it's loose fitting, so you just throw it on and you go about your day. And so they'll probably choose this more warm cardigans, so there is a sense of function in it. And they might choose more chunky cardigans and casual designs. Like the cardigan won't read vintage and girly, or it won't read classic. It's just casual. And so that is why a stone person would choose it. Versus for earth, They might be drawn to cardigans because they're natural, they're rugged, and again, that sense of coziness. But they would probably choose something that has an obvious texture. So maybe it's a chunky knit or this long textured one, like you can see just from the photo that you can almost feel the texture is going to be a little bit rough and long and strong, right? And so they're going to choose those natural fibers. And it might be even like a printed cardigan with one of those kind of classic designs, and again, it can give this kind of country feel. So you can see that cardigans are not actually that simple. And it's important to ask yourself if you like them, why do you like them? And how do you like to wear them, and what sort of role do they fulfill in your outfits? Another example that is typically misunderstood, I think, is sneakers. So I think 95% of people probably think that sneakers equals stone. And in their kind of normal way, they're a sporty, easy, practical shoe. So someone with a stone style root, it makes a very easy, natural choice for them. And they would pick just relaxed, comfy shape. So they might be, medium to large soles, quite thick soles because they're comfortable, just your regular sneaker in a variety of shapes and forms. But actually, if you look into Ellie Jean's book, she talks about that mushroom also have white sneakers, and there's usually those more leather classic sneakers. And why they choose it is because it's that simple, neutral shoe that can really blend into an outfit. And so if you have the mushroom style route, you might be drawn to those leather or suede clean sneakers. I feel like that simplicity is actually key. So even though, they are sneakers and they are comfortable, this is not your motivation. It's more about completing the outfit by adding a simple shoe that doesn't draw attention to itself and it is functional. You might find that if you are the moon style route, you're also drawn to sneakers, but for a slightly different reason. And that is because to you, they might be a very easy way to add edge. So for example, you might pick those Vans shoes, like in this example, but with a skirt. And it straight away becomes that edgy outfit. Or you might pick black leather sneakers with a chunky sole. And again, they neutralize almost the classic fit and shape of the outfit. And so for me, it's almost about the sense of rebellion of, this is my outfit, but I'm going to add something different. And a similar why is actually with the sun style route. But in here, I think for some people, sneakers are an opportunity to add something unexpected. So you might have quite a simple or predictable outfit or a basic outfit, and then you add something different with your shoe. And so someone with a sun style route would choose a pop of color, a metallic, or maybe a big interesting shape. And so you can see in my examples in here, all of those sneakers are very different from the mushroom or the stone sneaker. They're interesting. And so that is the core motivator for someone as a sun style route to choose a sneaker. And I personally, I have these big pink sneakers that I love wearing. And they are comfortable. And I walk a lot in them. But I love them because they're interesting. And I recently bought these pink New Balances. And again, I bought them because the shape is interesting. And it's almost like a subversion of it's a sneaker, but it's pink. So it's a little bit interesting. It's a little bit unexpected. Versus I also have white sneakers, and those are for traveling. I don't wear those in my day-to-day life, but when I'm traveling and I need to walk a lot and I just want a shoe that blends in my outfits, this is a sneaker that I go for. So it's a very different reason why I would choose each of those. Let's now look into maxi skirts. And this is something that if you have the earth style route, you probably think that this is very obviously an earth piece. And if you choose it because it's loose, it's flowy, it's comfortable, it's very easy to wear, you just throw it on and go about your day, then you probably have the earth style route. And you can find this in more tiered designs, in earthy shades, maybe vintage prints. It might be mixing different patterns, kind of like cutouts. So it looks very natural, and it might look a little bit more boho inspired or vintagey. However, a lot of people that have the flower style route are also drawn to maxi skirts, but it's more because they are delicate. They're light, right? Especially if they're made of this very light, flowy cotton, if they're in a white shade, maybe they have kind of a roughly look and appeal. That is why it can look quite girly and feminine, but like in this more delicate way, more sweet. And so this is why if you have a flower style route, just because you're drawn to this specific type of maxi skirt, it doesn't mean you have earth. It is just a different expression of the flower style route. And I've actually been very surprised this year because I bought a blue maxi skirt very similar to that one in the picture. And I struggled to understand why when I tried the same skirt in white or in this khaki green, I didn't like it. And it was because my motivation actually for choosing this piece was not purely because of comfort and flow and ease of movement. And it's also not because I want to be delicate and feminine, but it was because I wanted a bold piece. And so a maxi skirt, because of the length of it, especially on someone that's not super tall like I am, it looks like a big piece, like it takes a lot of space. And so it's bold, it's substantial. And especially if you add the bold color or print, you're drawing attention to yourself in that way, right? And so for me, that was the reason why someone with a sun style root can also choose a maxi skirt without necessarily having flower or earth as their style roots. So those were the specific pieces. Let's now look into some fabrics or elements you can find in your clothes. So first of all, let's talk about glitter. And I think that fire and sun are your typical associations. And so in a fire execution, glitter feels luxurious, rich, opulent. And so people who choose it in a more of a glamorous piece. Maybe it is in a dress, in a jacket, in something that adds this feeling of richness. Versus if you have the sun style root, you'll find yourself adding glitter, sequins, rhinestones to pieces that don't need it. For example, this rhinestone jeans, and I actually have a similar pair, and I love it because it's unusual, not because it is opulent or glamorous or luxurious. I love it because it's fun. And you can see in here that, let's say, wrap top, it doesn't need to be in glitter. It's already quite a feminine, interesting piece, but when you add that glitter, it just becomes unexpected. And you might be surprised, the glitter actually features into the flower style root as well, because it can also give that sense of whimsy, sweetness, childlike excitement, right? Like little girls usually like to play with those glittery fun kind of sprinkles, right? And so if you have flower, you might find yourself having those like mermaid tops, those very light shimmery skirts. All of that is how you can incorporate glitter in a way that it's not because it's luxurious or unexpected, but more like because it's dreamy and sweet and delicate. Another element that can be confusing because it belongs to more than one style root is actually silk as a fabric. And so typically people say it's fire or it is mountain, but it can actually be some other style roots as well. So if you like it because it is a luxurious fabric and it gives again that sense of richness, opulence, femininity, you probably have the fire style root. And you can pick it in maybe a fitted slip dress or like in here in a deep v-neck blouse because it adds luxury and sensuality. Versus if you're more of a mountain person, you probably like silk because it's an expensive and high quality fabric and people can sort of tell that it's high quality. And so for you, it will probably be a little bit more of a clean cut, neutral colors like the black slip skirt, maybe a black silk tank top, black silk pants, anything like that. That is there because of the quality and kind of expensive looking feeling. That is why you're actually drawn to it. However, you might have mushroom and still be drawn to silk. And that is because it is a classic, timeless, and quite simple fabric. So it's not 3D textured, like for example, linen has texture, or something like leather can also have texture and suede. Silk is quite simple. If you have the mushroom style root, you'll probably pick something that's quite simple, like Miranda Kerr's white silk dress. Very clean, very simple, very classic, no embellishments. Or maybe a classic polka dot shirt that is quite fitted, quite classic, right? Like this could be from 10 years ago and it could be now, and it looks equally timeless. And so silk can be used for people with the mushroom style root as well. But also if you have flower, you might find that you like silk because it's quite gentle as a fabric. It adds a sense of delicateness. And so for you, you might choose it in things like tank tops, maybe add a little bit of lace, and that straight away, especially in a light color, adds that sense of delicateness. Another fabric that can be confusing is velvet. And so typically the association is again with fire because it's soft, it's sensual, it sort of clings to the body, adds that sense of richness and opulence. And so if you have fire, you'll probably pick it in a dress, in a maxi skirt, in a top that is kind of wrap top, anything that adds a little bit of that luxury feeling. But velvet is actually part of the moon style root as well, because it's quite a rich fabric, and again, it can add that sense of edginess. So if you have moon, you'll probably be drawn to darker, so grays, blacks, navies, all of those darker shades of velvet, and almost looking to achieve a vampire-esque aesthetic. But you also might find velvet in earth. And people with earth are oftentimes drawn to flow. And velvet, especially in a long coat, in a maxi skirt, if it's not clingy and fitted, it can actually give you that bohemian, easy life kind of feeling. And so you can pick that in a maxi skirt or something that is just quite easygoing. And finally, I also found that as someone with a sun style root, I'm also drawn to velvet. And so again, you might choose that because the texture is a little bit more interesting. It's not flat. It has this shine, that dimensionality. And so if you have sun, you might pair a velvet coat with a very basic outfit to add this unexpected, unusual sense. Or maybe you pick white leg trousers, but you make them velvet, again, to add visual interest to your outfits. And so again, similar pieces, but depending on how and why you choose them, can mean different style roots. And finally, let's talk about leather, because I feel like this one is also confusing because in Ellie Jean's book, it literally features in different style roots. And so depending on why and how you choose it, can mean different things. So the very obvious association is that leather equals moon. And that is because leather on its own is quite a hard, quite tough fabric. It's usually dark, kind of black leather. And so it gives that sense of strength. And so if you have moon, you probably have leather jackets, leather coats, leather boots, chunky boots, anything like that that gives you that darkness and strength. But actually, you might be drawn to leather for slightly different reason. You might be drawn to it because it is more expensive, more luxurious looking, it's high quality. And so if you have mountain, you'd pick leather pieces that are more structured and high quality. So for example, loafers, ankle boots, bags, coat, blazer jacket. Anything like that in a leather execution is screaming kind of expensive high quality because those things aren't cheap. And so just because you like leather, you can see it doesn't mean you have moon. Another reason that people choose leather is because it's a natural, quite durable fabric. And if that's your motivation, you probably have earth. And so the execution here is going to be less about making a statement and more about picking something that's practical. So whether you pick a suede jacket because it's easy to throw on, if you live in a place that doesn't rain a lot, that can be a really good one. Or you pick something that's a leather, but it's just an easy piece, you throw it on and you go about your life. This is something that can be a huge part, especially in more brown or green or those more neutral earthy shades. It can be a very, very fundamental piece for the earth style root. And finally, just like with pretty much all the other elements, you might like leather because of the interesting texture. And so if you pick something that's leather, but maybe in a different color, like you have the green coat, the red back and the red boots, you probably don't choose it because it's tough and strong or classic, timeless, luxurious. You choose it because it's interesting. And that means you have the sun style root. And I have, for example, this blue leather coat that if this was black or brown, it would probably go into mountain because it's quite a classic shape. But actually for me, I love it because it's this baby blue color and it just adds visual interest and almost removes that sense of toughness that I'm not a huge fan of. And so I hope you can see how the same fabrics or the same items can be executed very differently by people with different motivations, with different style roots. So let me know below, was this helpful to clarify or explain your style root choices? And if you want to know more about the different variations of coats or jeans for different style roots, check out those two videos right here. I'll see you there.